Staff Sergeant Aurora, Rory Hendricks, never expected her biggest battle to be fought at home. She'd survived hostage rescues in Kabul, led her Delta Force squad through insurgent-infested villages, and earned a reputation as the deadliest commander in her unit. But when an urgent message dragged her back to Cedar Falls, a small American town that once called her a hero, Rory discovered a threat worse than any insurgent force: a crooked sheriff, a bought-off mayor, and an entire police department paid to keep people terrified. They thought they could make an example of one stubborn citizen. They thought intimidation and brutality would keep the truth buried. They thought wrong, because Rory Hendricks is about to show them what happens when you corner a Delta Force soldier who's done being polite. Cedar Falls is about to learn that some wars are fought without borders, and some nightmares carry the full weight of special ops behind them. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. Aurora Hendricks stepped off the midnight bus feeling the chill of an early autumn wind skimming across the empty station parking lot. Though she wore civilian clothes, rugged jeans, a worn leather jacket, and scuffed boots, she carried herself with a bearing that hinted at her military background. The station lights were flickering overhead, revealing the tension in her eyes. She was back in Cedar Falls for one reason: to find out why her mother hadn't answered the phone in 3 days. She hated traveling unannounced, but she'd used every other channel she could think of, calling friends in town, sending messages to the local sheriff's office, even checking with the local hospital. All dead ends. She tried not to jump to conclusions. Her mother, Aria Hendricks, wasn't easily frightened. A retired school teacher who had seen her daughter off to war more times than she liked. Aria was tough in her own graceful way, but Aurora couldn't shake the feeling something was wrong. She slung her duffel bag over one shoulder, her posture unconsciously that of a soldier ready for action. She looked at the solitary cab parked near the curb. The driver leaned out the window, smoking a cigarette. He gave her a once-over, noticed her muscular frame and the unspoken confidence in her stance, and nodded politely without further comment. Aurora climbed in, gave him the address, and they set off into the dark. Cedar Falls had never been a bustling metropolis, but it used to have a certain warmth. Now the streets felt colder. The storefronts either closed early or boarded up entirely. A few flickering neon signs from the 24-hour diner or the local dive bar glowed weakly. As the cab crept along Elm Avenue, Aurora spotted a brand new sheriff's SUV rolling past, windows tinted, lights off. The driver inside barely glanced her way. "Town's changed a bit," the cabbie remarked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. "You visiting family?" Aurora hesitated. "Yes. Been a while since I came home." "Better watch your step," he said carefully, turning down a narrow side street. "Folks around here keep their heads down." "What's that supposed to mean?" Aurora pressed. He blew out a breath and fell silent, as if afraid to elaborate. After a moment, he cleared his throat. "I'm just the driver, ma'am." They pulled up to a modest little house, her childhood home. The porch light was off. Aurora frowned. Her mother usually kept it on until bedtime. She paid the driver, thanked him, and stepped onto the sidewalk, her heartbeat fluttering with worry. The wind rustled the tall oak trees that lined the street, and the neighborhood was eerily silent. She approached the front door. Normally, Aria would have the curtains drawn but not fully closed. There'd be a faint glow from the living room lamp. Tonight, every window was dark. Aurora tried the doorknob. It turned easily. It wasn't locked. Heart pounding, she reached for the sidearm she no longer wore on her hip. Force of habit. She cursed under her breath at her own jumpiness, then pushed the door open. Inside, the air felt stale, tinged with the faint smell of something metallic. She fumbled for the light switch and blinked as the overhead fixture flickered to life. The living room was in disarray. Cushions tossed aside, coffee table knocked over, a framed family photo on the floor with shattered glass. Aurora's pulse thudded. "Mom?" she called, her voice tight. No response. She quickly, systematically cleared each room. Kitchen. Chairs overturned, a mug shattered on the floor. Bedroom. Mattress half off its frame, the sheets rumpled as though pulled in haste. The only sign of her mother was a crocheted shawl lying on the floor by the bed, something Arya always draped over her shoulders while reading. Aurora crouched to pick it up, her mind racing with possibilities. Kidnapping? Robbery? Her mother was no wealthy heiress, so it wasn't about money. Or had she been taken to the hospital? But that wouldn't explain the chaos. Or why no one had bothered to lock the door. She yanked out her phone, ignoring the hour. Ignoring the fact that Cedar Falls probably had limited resources at this time of night. She dialed the sheriff's office. A bored-sounding deputy answered. Sheriff's Department. State your business. This is Staff Sergeant Aurora Hendricks, United States Army. My mother's house looks like it was broken into. She's missing. I need an officer here, now. There was a moment of silence, then a curt, "Address." She rattled it off. The line went dead. Aurora gritted her teeth. No reassurance, no, "We'll send someone right away." She fought back a surge of anger. This definitely was not the Cedar Falls she remembered. Less than 5 minutes later, surprisingly fast, the rumble of a large V8 engine outside caught her attention. Aurora stepped onto the porch to see a brand new black SUV rolling up. It bore the official sheriff's insignia on the door. 2 figures got out, a tall, broad deputy in his late 30s with slicked-back hair, and a second officer, younger, with a nervous fidget. Their posture was not that of typical small-town cops who greet you with a neighborly nod. The older deputy eyed Aurora. "You the one who called?" "Yes, my mother's missing. There's been a break-in. I need an investigation started." "Slow down," he barked, stepping into the house without permission. Aurora followed, bristling at his dismissive tone. He cast a glance around the messed-up living room, shining a flashlight she didn't think he needed given the overhead lights were on. "Guess someone had a party in here, huh? Your mother might have taken off. People do that sometimes. Old folks get confused. Maybe go wander." "She's not senile," Aurora snapped. "She's healthy and alert. This house is trashed, which suggests a violent break-in. This isn't normal." The deputy gave a careless shrug. "I'm Deputy Holt. I'll file a report. Probably your mom just needed some air. You a local?" Aurora inhaled sharply. "I'm from Cedar Falls originally. I'm currently on active duty at Fort Bragg." She eyed him. "Are you going to dust for prints, check for evidence? Because someone took my mother." The younger officer, his name tag read Sanders, hovered by the front door. He looked uneasy, as if wanting to say something but not daring to. Holt ignored her question. "We can't go making assumptions. Maybe she had a boyfriend, maybe they had a fight. Maybe she's been acting strange, could be a domestic situation." The grin on his face was oily. "What did you say your name was again?" She let out a hard breath. "Staff Sergeant Aurora Hendricks, U.S. Army Delta Force." The detail about Delta Force was an overshare, but she needed them to know she wasn't just some random passerby. She had training, resources, and no patience for nonsense. Holt's expression flickered. "A female soldier, huh? You big time or something?" He sounded amused, but she could see a flicker of caution in his eyes. "My team calls me the deadliest Delta Force commander, so yes, I'd like to think so." Sanders coughed as if covering a laugh or maybe a flicker of tension. Holt narrowed his gaze. "So your mom's missing," Holt said slowly, "and you're claiming foul play. We'll note it down, but you should check the local hospital in case she wandered off and hurt herself. People don't always stay put, especially older folks." Aurora's hand tightened into a fist at her side. She forced a calm she'd learned in war zones. "I know how to check hospitals. I've done that. Also tried calling. No one has seen her. I'm telling you, this was a break-in. Look at that photo frame smashed on the floor." Holt eyed it dismissively. "Accidents happen, and maybe your mother doesn't like you as much as you think. People have secrets, you know. You can fill out a missing persons form if you want." He turned, heading for the door. "We'll look into it." "That's it?" she demanded, voice rising. "You're not even going to collect any evidence? Take pictures? You're not going to ask neighbors if they heard anything?" He paused in the doorway, a sneer curling his lips. "Ma'am, you might have outranked some soldiers in the army, but around here, we run the show. We'll let you know if something comes up." With that, he and Sanders strolled out, leaving Aurora alone on the porch, seething. She watched the SUV roll away, fury pounding in her veins. This was not the friendly small-town law enforcement she once knew. Something had changed, something was off, and if they weren't going to investigate, she would. Aurora locked up the house as best she could, found her mother's old car keys in the kitchen drawer, and discovered Aria's battered sedan still parked in the driveway out back, so her mother hadn't driven anywhere. Aurora rummaged for any clues in the car, but found nothing. Then she carefully set the house alarm, miraculously still functional, and slipped back into the night, heading to find answers in the only place she knew that might still be open, the Cedar Falls Diner, a 24-hour greasy spoon that used to be a hub of local gossip. She parked Aria's sedan under a flickering street lamp, noticing the few vehicles outside the diner included another brand-new police SUV. Inside, she found the classic American eatery layout, rows of red vinyl booths, bright fluorescent lights, and the aroma of burnt coffee. At the far corner, a lone customer sat, the brim of his baseball cap pulled low. The waitress behind the counter, a middle-aged woman named Sue, if Aurora recalled correctly, gave Aurora a polite, albeit wary, smile. "Help you, hun?" Sue asked, her voice subdued. Aurora slid onto a stool. "Coffee, please." She couldn't bring herself to eat just yet, too anxious about her mother. Sue brought a mug, then lowered her voice. "I heard you were in town. People talk. Something about your mom missing?" Aurora's eyes flashed. "You heard that already?" Sue glanced at the corner booth. "Some folks chat. You ask me, you best be careful. This town ain't the same. Sheriff Taggart's men run things differently now. Real different." "Taggart?" Aurora repeated, realizing the old sheriff must have retired or been voted out. Or forced out. "What's changed?" Sue hesitated, then began refilling the sugar canister as a cover to whisper, "We used to trust the police. Now it feels like we live under their thumbs. People vanish or get harassed. Businesses pay fees or get visits from code enforcement or health inspectors who shut them down. Those who speak up..." She trailed off, her gaze drifting to the corner booth. Aurora sipped her coffee, which tasted bitter and stale, but she'd had worse in the field. "I'm not afraid of them," she said quietly. "I just need to find out what happened to my mother." Sue's eyes darted toward the corner again. "Be careful. That's all I'm saying." She left the check on the counter and hurried away. Aurora realized the man in the corner had stood up and was walking toward her. He was broad-shouldered, looked to be in his mid-40s, with a face that showed more miles than years. He took a seat a few stools down, not too close, as if wanting to speak but also not wanting to alarm her. He nodded politely. "You looking for Aria Hendricks?" he asked in a low voice. Her heart thumped. "Yes." "Do you know something?" He glanced at the door, making sure no one else was near. "I was out near the elementary school last night. Saw a sheriff's SUV parked outside. 2 deputies came out, half carrying, half dragging a woman who looked like your mama. She didn't look conscious. Or maybe she was hurt." Aurora's chest constricted. "You're sure it was her?" He nodded solemnly. "I recognized the shawl. She always wore that patchwork thing, right?" Anger seared through Aurora. Why would deputies take her? The man looked around again. "Folks say she was helping a neighbor gather signatures for a recall petition against the mayor. Something about misuse of funds. Maybe that's got something to do with it." She inhaled sharply, remembering her mother had always been active in civic causes. "Why didn't you stop them?" He gave her a look that mixed fear and regret. "You think I'm crazy? If I step in, I'm next. I got a family, lady. Sorry. Wish I could do more." He stood up and headed for the door, leaving a few bucks on the counter for a tip. Aurora watched him go, her hands shaking with fury. She forced herself to breathe. She knew all about fear. In war zones you respect it. But in Cedar Falls, people should feel safe. The fact that they were terrified of their own law enforcement spoke volumes. The lead suspect in her mother's disappearance was now the sheriff's department itself. She needed allies, needed more information. She quickly paid for her coffee and left. Outside, the air felt colder. She was about to unlock the sedan when a loud engine roared up behind her. Another sheriff's SUV. Lights off. A tall figure stepped out. It was Deputy Holt, wearing a smirk. Sanders emerged on the passenger side, looking uneasy. They blocked her path to the car. "Late night to be out," Holt said, voice dripping with condescension. "We got a call about someone matching your description, loitering around the diner." Aurora's jaw clenched. "I'm getting in my car and going home." Holt took a step closer, crossing his arms. "See, I heard you've been asking questions, stirring up trouble. I told you to let us handle it." "I have no intention of interfering with police business," Aurora said, her tone colder than the wind. "But my mother is missing, and I will find her." Sanders glanced at Holt, then back at Aurora. He gave a small shake of his head, as if pitying her. Holt, however, looked amused. "You're a military woman, huh? Delta Force? That's got to be what, the best of the best? So you probably think you're unstoppable. Let me tell you something." He stepped even closer, his breath brushing her cheek. "Here in Cedar Falls, the law is what we say it is. If your mother wanted to vanish, that's her choice. Maybe she had reasons you don't know about. Or maybe you keep poking your nose where it doesn't belong, and you'll join her." Aurora's fist flexed, and it took every bit of discipline not to flatten him. She managed to keep her voice steady, not letting the raw anger break through. "Threatening a soldier is a federal offense, Deputy." Holt chuckled low in his throat. "We're real scared. Now, be a good soldier and go back to whatever base you came from." Aurora stared into his eyes, letting him see the cold steel behind them. "Out of my way." He held his ground, so she deliberately brushed past him, her shoulder knocking his arm aside with surprising force. She opened the sedan door, slid in, and locked it. For a moment, the two cops lingered, as if daring her to do something reckless. Then Holt finally stepped back. Aurora started the engine, reversed into the street, and drove away without looking back. When she was a safe distance away, she let out the breath she'd been holding, her heart hammering. She needed help. Someone not tied to the local system. But who? The local FBI field office was over an hour away in the next city. She could call 911, but that would route straight to the county sheriff, who was part of this corruption. Her mind raced. She recalled an old army buddy, Captain Lindsay Cole, who had moved into the FBI after leaving the military. She still had Lindsay's number, though they hadn't talked in a year. This was no time for pride. She fished her phone out, found Lindsay's contact, and hit call. To her relief, Lindsay answered despite the late hour. She sounded groggy. "Rory? Everything okay?" Aurora exhaled, letting the tension seep into her words. "Linz, I need you. It's about my mom. I think the sheriff's department here is behind her disappearance. The entire department might be corrupt. It's bad." There was a short silence. "Where are you?" "Cedar Falls, my hometown. Can you help?" "I can't promise the Bureau will jump in just yet, but I'll come personally. I'm on leave for a couple of days anyway. I'll call in a favor or two, see what I can dig up. Are you safe?" "I'm a Delta Force commander," Aurora said, a trace of grim humor leaking out. "I can handle myself. But hurry." They agreed to meet the following morning at a small cafe on the outskirts of Cedar Falls to avoid prying eyes. Aurora ended the call, feeling marginally better. She had one ally on the way. She spent what remained of the night back in her mother's house, dozing with one ear open in the battered recliner, a baseball bat next to her, jumpy from every creak. Morning broke with a gray light seeping through the curtains. She rose, splashed cold water on her face, and left. This time, she'd be the one taking action. She drove to a local mechanic shop owned by Mr. Vogel, a longtime friend of her mother's, hoping to glean more clues. He was always an early riser, and she found him wiping down the hood of an old truck in the cramped garage, the smell of oil thick in the air. He looked up in surprise at her approach. "Aurora, good to see you. though I wish it were under better circumstances. I heard about your mom. I'm so sorry." She cut to the chase. "What do you know?" He cast a worried glance at the open garage door. "Not here. Come around back." He guided her into a small, cluttered office where the walls were lined with auto calendars from past decades. Closing the door, he spoke in a hushed tone. "Arya mentioned to me she was building a petition. She found out the mayor's awarding city contracts to a private firm that's funneling money back to him. Something about funds for the new community center being misused. She wanted to gather enough signatures for a recall vote. I told her to be careful. Mayor Rhodes has the sheriff in his pocket." Aurora nodded. "I suspect they took her because of that." He rubbed a calloused hand over his face. "I tried to warn her. She said she wouldn't be scared into silence. Next thing I hear is she's vanished. The sheriff's men have been around, asking me what I know, threatening to shut down my shop with violations if I don't cooperate." "That's insane," Aurora muttered. "So the mayor's corrupt. The sheriff's on his payroll. The entire system might be compromised." Vogel nodded miserably. "That's the sense. It used to just be rumors, but now it's blatant. People vanish, or their businesses get shut down, or they get arrested on flimsy charges. A couple of outspoken folks ended up in jail. Never saw them again." "Never saw them again?" Aurora's stomach clenched. She thought of her mother. He exhaled heavily. "I heard they might have been transferred to the next county over, but there's no official paper trail. Some say the sheriff's holding them in a private facility. Others claim they're... well, it's too dark to think about." Aurora's expression hardened. "I'm going to stop them, Mr. Vogel. Thank you for telling me this." He nodded, fear etched into his eyes. "Be safe, Aurora. You're a good soldier, but these people, they don't play fair." She left, her adrenaline building. The scale of this corruption was staggering. She was used to fighting in war zones, but this was her hometown. She refused to let fear paralyze her. Her next stop was the cafe, where she'd arranged to meet Lindsay. Lindsay Cole arrived wearing civilian clothes but carrying the authoritative air of an FBI agent. She had short curly hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. They embraced quickly, then found a secluded corner booth where the hush of morning conversations cloaked them. "So your mother was possibly abducted by local law enforcement because she tried to expose corruption?" Lindsay said once Aurora gave a quick recap. Aurora nodded. "I'm sure of it. I saw the aftermath in the house. People are terrified. They keep saying the sheriff does the mayor's dirty work." "My mother's gone, Lindsay." Her voice caught. "What do I do?" Lindsay pursed her lips. "I can't just storm in as an FBI agent. We need probable cause. We need evidence that local enforcement is compromised. Otherwise, the Bureau might back off to avoid stepping on the state's toes. But I do have some contacts who can help expedite an inquiry. Are you sure you want to do this the official way? Because it might take time." Aurora clenched her fists. "I don't have time. But I don't want to break the law either, Linz. I'm still a soldier. I have a code. I need to find my mother, but I'm not about to barge in with guns blazing unless there's no other option." Lindsay studied her. "Let's gather intel. I'll talk to a friend at the Department of Justice, see if we can get some eyes on Cedar Falls from a higher vantage. In the meantime, we need to find out who's dirty, who might be an ally, and figure out if your mother is still in town or has been transferred elsewhere." Aurora frowned. "Deputy Holt is definitely dirty. There's a younger deputy, Sanders. He seemed uncomfortable. Maybe he's not fully on board with all this. Could be our weak link." Lindsay tapped her phone. "We also need direct evidence. Testimony, videos, documents, something to prove what they're doing. Once I have that, I can bypass the local office and go straight to a federal judge." Aurora nodded. "Let's start, because every moment we wait, my mother could be in danger." They finished their coffee quickly. Lindsay said she'd head to a local motel under an alias to keep a low profile. Aurora agreed to contact Deputy Sanders, see if he'd talk. They parted ways in the parking lot, exchanging a quick hug. Aurora's next steps would push her deeper into the underbelly of Cedar Falls. She needed to talk to this Sanders, who might be harboring doubts about the corruption. But first, she had a feeling the sheriff's department might be watching her house. So she swung by a local store, purchased a cheap prepaid phone for untraceable calls, and carefully made her way back to her mother's place. Sure enough, parked across the street was a plain sedan with a silhouette behind the wheel. She recognized Deputy Holt's broad shoulders. He was blatantly surveilling the house. Honora clenched her jaw. Fine, if they wanted to watch, let them watch an empty property. She slipped around the block on foot, used back alleys, and circled behind the sedan. In broad daylight it was risky, but she had Delta Force training on her side. She approached quietly, ducking behind a row of hedges. She wanted to confirm Holt was alone. He was. He sat there, occasionally sipping coffee, scanning the house. Aurora considered confronting him, but that might escalate things. Instead, she crept away undetected, heart pounding with adrenaline. They were brazen, unafraid of being caught snooping. That arrogance would be their downfall. She returned to her car, driving off. Her mission: find Deputy Sanders at the station, or somewhere more private, corner him, and get some answers. As she navigated toward the sheriff's station on Main Street, she kept an eye out for any tails. No sign of Holt. She pulled into the station's side parking lot, noticing official vehicles lined up. The building was old, but with new additions that signaled money flowing in from somewhere. She entered the lobby, ignoring the suspicious stares from a desk clerk. "I need to speak with Deputy Sanders," she said calmly. "It's personal." The clerk stared at her blankly. "He's busy." Aurora smiled stiffly. "I'll wait." She took a seat on a hard plastic chair, crossing her legs and exuding an aura of unwavering patience. After 10 minutes, she glimpsed movement at the far end of the corridor. Sanders, stepping out of a room. She stood, raising her voice just enough. "Deputy Sanders?" He turned, saw her, and immediately looked nervous. Glancing around, he mumbled something to a colleague and walked over. "Ma'am, is there a problem? May I speak with you?" Privately, she gave him a pointed look. He swallowed. "All right, follow me." She followed him down a short hallway into a small interview room. 2 chairs, a battered metal table. The overhead fluorescent buzzed faintly. He shut the door. "What is this about?" He tried for an authoritative tone, but it came out shaky. Aurora's voice was low but fierce. "I know you saw what happened the other night. You know I'm telling the truth about the planted evidence, the intimidation. Now my mother is missing, and I suspect the department took her. I need your help." He ran a hand through his hair, clearly on edge. "Ma'am, Deputy Holt already told me to keep quiet. He said there'd be consequences if I spoke out of turn." Sanders looked at me. She locked eyes with him, voice steady. "I've been in war zones where local police were as corrupt as the insurgents we were fighting. I've seen what happens when good people stand by in fear. It never ends well. Right now, you have a chance to do the right thing. Do you know where my mother is?" He swallowed hard. I'm not sure exactly, but I've heard rumors. The sheriff keeps certain detainees at an old warehouse by the river. Off the books, no official processing." Aurora felt a surge of hope mixed with rage. "So they're holding innocent people there. Do you realize how illegal that is?" He nodded miserably. "I do. That's why I joined the department thinking I could make a difference. Then I found out about this dark side. I can't just quit. They track everything. They threaten family. I have a wife and a baby on the way. If I step out of line..." Aurora reached across the table, resting a hand gently on his forearm. "I get it. Fear is powerful, but so is courage. We can protect you if you become a whistleblower." He let out a ragged breath. "That's easy to say, but you don't know what Sheriff Taggart and Mayor Rhodes are capable of. They have the entire system rigged. Judges, city council, local press. Everyone's on their payroll or too scared." Aurora's mind raced. This was bigger than she'd feared. "Then we go higher. The FBI, the Department of Justice. I have contacts there." He looked at her, something like hope flickering in his eyes. You do? Yes, but we need proof. We need them to see how bad it is. Documents, recordings. Can you get me anything that shows the existence of this warehouse or any logs of detainees? Sanders hesitated, fear warring with conscience. I might have access to the server, with shift schedules and unofficial detainee logs, but if I'm caught... Be careful, Aurora said gently. You're not alone. I'll keep you safe, I promise. Just then the door flew open. Holt stood in the doorway, eyes blazing. What the hell is this? Sanders jumped up, nerves exploding. Aurora rose more slowly. Holt glared at her. Ma'am, you have no business interrogating my deputy. Get out. She stared back, unflinching. You were tailing me earlier, deputy. Are you bored or something? He ignored the jab, pointing a finger at Sanders. You got a job to do. Get back to your post. Now. Sanders ducked his head and fled, guilt etched on his face. Holt turned his glare on Aurora. And you. I'm warning you, lady. You keep meddling, you're gonna regret it. Aurora lifted her chin. I'm sure my mother regretted it too, right? Before you had her abducted? Holt's grin was shark-like. Prove it. Now get out of this station before I arrest you for trespassing. She walked past him, not giving him the satisfaction of a backward glance. Every instinct told her that violence could erupt any minute if she pushed too far in the open. She'd have to be smarter than them. And she would be. Outside, she clenched her fists. She had a lead, an old warehouse by the river. If that was where they were holding her mother and maybe other detainees, it was time to pay it a visit. But first, she needed backup. She dialed Lindsay's number again. Any luck? Lindsay asked. Aurora filled her in. Lindsay's voice hardened. That's enough probable cause for me to contact a federal judge I know. If we can get a warrant, though it'll be tricky, the judge might be cautious about stepping on local jurisdiction. But let me try. Aurora nodded. In the meantime, I'll do some recon. That warehouse is presumably guarded. I'll be careful. Rory, don't do anything crazy. Wait for me, okay? Aurora forced a smile that Lindsay couldn't see over the phone. I'll wait, she lied. They hung up. She immediately started the sedan and headed toward the river. Her mother's life could depend on immediate action. If they realized Aurora was onto them, who knew what they'd do? She'd never forgive herself if she waited around for a piece of paper while her mother suffered. She drove across town, passing shuttered factories and old mills, remnants of a time when Cedar Falls thrived on industry. Now, rusted fences and graffiti-strewn walls told the story of neglect. She turned onto a desolate road leading to the abandoned docks, where a couple of large warehouses still stood, presumably for storage or private business. Parking a few blocks away, she took a quiet approach on foot, slipping between empty shipping containers. The place reeked of salt, diesel, and rotting wood. She spotted a chain-link fence around one warehouse that looked more maintained than the others. A brand-new lock on the gate, and a sign reading, "Restricted Property." It crouched behind a stack of pallets, scanning the perimeter. Sure enough, a dark SUV idled near a side entrance, engine off. Two men leaning against it, both wearing casual clothes but carrying themselves like law enforcement. Hands near their hips, posture alert. Probably Taggart's men. Aurora's heart hammered. She had no illusions about the danger. She was unarmed, aside from her combat knife she'd stashed in her boot. A direct assault would be suicide, but she needed to see if her mother was in there. She waited, controlling her breathing. One guard wandered around the side of the building, presumably to relieve himself. The other checked his phone. Sensing a brief opening, Aurora moved low and silent, crossing to a side window. It was grimy and partially boarded up, but she found a gap near the top. Standing on a crate, she managed to peer inside, her stomach twisted at the sight. The large, empty warehouse had been converted into a makeshift holding area. Metal cages, like oversized dog kennels, lined one wall. Some were empty, others had people slumped inside, their wrists zip-tied, expressions hollow. A few wore tattered clothes, clearly battered, and there, Aurora's breath caught. Her mother, Aria Hendricks, lay on the floor of one cage, curled up, clutching her arm as if injured. Aurora almost cried out. She bit her lip, forcing herself to stay calm. Her mother was alive, that was something, but she was locked in a cage among what looked like half a dozen other detainees. She spotted a large figure patrolling inside, wearing a black tactical vest that said Sheriff's Department in small letters. That must be Taggart or one of his top men. Rage flared so hot that Aurora momentarily saw red. They were caging citizens like animals. Her mother's hair was disheveled, face pale. Aurora wanted to rush in, but it would be a bloodbath. She needed a plan, some combination of stealth, cunning, and possibly outside help. But who? Then she heard an engine approach from the other side of the building. Another SUV, bigger, tinted windows. It pulled up to the loading dock. The man wearing the vest hustled over, had a quick, whispered exchange with whomever was inside the vehicle. Aurora craned her neck to catch a glimpse. She recognized him from campaign posters she'd seen around town in the past. The mayor, David Rhodes. A swirl of questions battered her mind. Why come here in broad daylight? Probably because they felt invincible. She saw Rhodes step out, adjusting his suit jacket, scanning the detainees with an expression that bordered on sadistic satisfaction. Then he kicked at one of the cages, eliciting a yelp from whoever was inside. Aurora clenched her fists, forcing herself not to smash the glass and charge in. Rhodes turned to the man in the vest. She couldn't catch all the words, but phrases drifted through the open warehouse door. Too risky to keep them here. Transfer. Quiet. No loose ends. Aurora's stomach turned to ice. They were planning to move or possibly eliminate the detainees. She dropped back down, heart pounding. She had to warn Lindsay. She needed to call in everything. FBI, state police, any cavalry that would come. But would they arrive in time? She worried Taggart or Rhodes might accelerate their timeline. As Aurora began to creep away, a sharp voice barked, "Hey you, stop!" She froze. One of the outside guards had returned. He was leveling a pistol, eyes wide. She had two choices, run or fight. She opted for a third. Fanning right, she let him follow her movement, then pivoted left in a lightning-fast maneuver, seizing his wrist and slamming his forearm against a crate. The gun clattered to the ground. She followed with an elbow strike to his jaw. He staggered, letting out a grunt, and Aurora hammered a vicious knee to his midsection. He collapsed, with a groan. The second guard rounded the corner, gun drawn. Aurora dove behind the crates. A bullet splintered the wood above her. She breathed through the adrenaline spike, scanning for an exit. If they pinned her down, she was done. She grabbed the fallen guard's pistol, tucked it in her belt, and sprinted deeper into the maze of containers. The second guard's shots echoed, missing by inches. She ducked behind a shipping container, hearing the crunch of gravel as he pursued. She counted his footfalls. The moment he stepped around the corner, she lunged, hooking his arm and twisting the gun free. A single, precise strike to the temple with the butt of his own weapon and he went limp. She inhaled raggedly. Gunfire from inside the warehouse meant they'd heard the commotion. More men might be coming. No time to do anything else. She had to retreat. She dashed toward the fence, hopped it with a practiced agility honed from years of special forces training, and disappeared into the maze of old buildings. Behind her, she heard shouting, engines revving. But she was gone, weaving through side streets until she reached her car. Slamming the door, she sped off, heart thundering. She had to contact Lindsay now. She had the proof, or at least a direct eyewitness account, that they were holding detainees. Her phone rang first, startling her. She picked up. A trembling voice. "It's Sanders. I found something you need to see. Meet me at the old sawmill near the county line in 1 hour. And please, don't bring anyone else." Aurora hesitated. This could be a trap, but she needed that evidence. "I'll be there." She ended the call and immediately dialed Lindsay, giving her a breathless update on what she'd seen. Lindsay cursed softly. "Rory, you sure your mother's okay?" "She's alive, but hurt. I think they're planning to move everyone, possibly kill them. I have to move fast. I'm meeting with Sanders. He says he has evidence. Then we can blow this wide open. Send me your location. I'll gather a tactical team if I can, but keep me posted. Don't do anything reckless. No promises, Aurora thought grimly. She ended the call, her mind spinning with scenarios. She'd faced terrorists, warlords, and insurgents. She never expected to face that level of brutality here at home. But she would do whatever it took to save her mother and the others. As she headed for the county line, one terrifying question consumed her. How far would these criminals go to keep their grip on Cedar Falls? She prayed she wouldn't find out too late. Aurora arrived at the abandoned sawmill precisely on time, anxiety thrumming through her veins. The structure loomed ahead, weathered planks and broken windows set against a backdrop of towering pine trees. The sun hung low in the sky, painting everything in harsh orange light. She parked her mother's sedan out of sight behind a collapsed storage shed and approached the building cautiously, scanning for traps or watchers. A lone figure stood at the edge of the sawmill floor, silhouette framed by dusty rays of sunlight streaming through the broken roof. Deputy Sanders. He looked more harried than ever, his uniform rumpled, face drawn. "You came alone?" he whispered, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "Yes," Aurora said softly. "Now show me what you found." Sanders pulled a flash drive from his pocket. "I copied some files off the department's server. Shift rosters, updated detainee logs, the unwritten ones they keep hidden. It shows exactly which deputies are on guard duty at that warehouse, plus references to special detainees." He swallowed hard. "Your mother's name is on the list, along with a code that suggests they plan to transfer her tomorrow night." Aurora shivered at the memory of overhearing words about a transfer. "Where? Did you find a location?" He shook his head. "Nothing specific, just notes about long-term disposal. That's how they word it. I'm sorry." Her heart twisted. She forced calm. "We'll stop them. This is enough evidence to get the FBI to act. Thank you, Sanders." "You're risking everything." He nodded, tears of fear in his eyes. "I couldn't keep living a lie. This town used to be good. I grew up here too. Now it's like a war zone, and I'm on the wrong side." Aurora placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You're making it right. As soon as we get this to my friend Lindsay at the FBI, we'll have an official raid. We'll rescue my mother and the others." He exhaled, relieved. "That's all I want." "But, Aurora, there's more. The mayor and the sheriff. They're not just kidnapping and extorting. They formed a partnership with a private security firm. Looks like it's some paramilitary outfit that's training a few of the deputies. The logs mention specialized gear coming in. They want to expand this operation." Her jaw clenched. "Expand into what? Arbitrary arrests across the county? This is madness." He handed her the flash drive. "Take it. Get out of here. I'll keep my head down, pretend I never saw you." She pocketed it. "Thank you. Do you have any place safe to go if this blows up? Friends or relatives outside Cedar Falls?" He shook his head. "My wife's expecting. We can't just run. But if it comes to that, we'll figure something out." Before Aurora could respond, a sudden roar of engines cut through the air. Headlights blazed through the sawmill's broken wall. She grabbed Sanders, pulling him down behind a pile of rotting timber. 3 vehicles screeched to a stop. 2 black sheriff SUVs and a sleek sedan. Doors slammed. Aurora risked a peek. Sheriff Taggart himself stepped out of the sedan, broad-shouldered, with a gray-streaked goatee and calculating eyes that scanned the building. Holt exited one of the SUVs, armed and ready, and 4 more deputies fanned out. Sanders' face went white. "They tracked me." Aurora cursed under her breath. "We have to get out." Too late. A booming voice echoed. "Sanders, we know you're here. You think we wouldn't notice someone downloading files onto a flash drive? Come out now, and maybe we'll let you live." Taggart's tone dripped contempt. Aurora signaled Sanders to stay low. If they surrendered, they'd be executed or worse. She quickly eyed the structure, looking for another exit. The boards and rafters were old, but maybe there was a side door. She gestured for Sanders to follow her lead. They crawled silently through the debris, the smell of damp sawdust and rusted metal filling the air. Taggart's men advanced, flashlights slicing through the gloom. Holt's voice joined in. "Come on out, traitor. Let's have a friendly chat." Sanders trembled. Aurora took the pistol she'd acquired earlier at the warehouse from her waistband, checking the safety. She had only a few bullets. She pressed a spare magazine, liberated from one of the unconscious guards, into Sanders' shaking hand. "If things get bad, do what you have to do." He nodded, swallowing hard. They reached a narrow corridor near the back. A rickety door blocked the way. Aurora tested the handle. Locked. She grimaced, glancing back as beams of light danced closer. With a swift kick, she broke the door open, the rotted wood giving way with a loud crack. She froze, hoping it wasn't too loud. But footsteps quickened behind them. "Over here!" someone shouted. Aurora and Sanders darted through the door. Outside was a small yard fenced by chain link topped with barbed wire. The gate was padlocked. Aurora cursed. "We're pinned," Sanders whispered, voice cracking. Shouts erupted as flashlights swept across the corridor behind them. Aurora surveyed the fence, measuring it. They might climb, but the barbed wire would slow them down, giving Taggart's men time to shoot. Then she noticed a stack of old metal sheets along the fence's edge, forming a rudimentary ramp to the top of the chain link. She hissed, "We climb." Sanders looked like he might pass out. "They'll shoot us off the fence." "Move fast," she growled. "Let's go." Gunshots rang out behind them. A bullet pinged off the concrete near Aurora's feet. She returned fire blindly down the corridor to make them take cover. Sanders scrambled onto the metal sheets first, hooking a leg over the fence top, wincing as barbed wire sliced at his uniform. Aurora fired 2 more shots, then holstered her weapon, racing up after him. Another shot whizzed past, and she felt the chain link vibrate under the impact. Sanders tumbled over the top, dropping to the ground on the other side with a yelp. Aurora vaulted next, ignoring the sting of barbs that tore at her jacket and arm. She landed awkwardly, rolling to absorb the impact. They were in a back alley, overshadowed by tall pines. The last of the evening light was disappearing. Aurora yanked Sanders to his feet. "Run!" They sprinted through the alley, hearts pounding. Behind them, Taggart's men shouted and cursed, forced to find another way around. Aurora led the way around a corner, down a narrow lane behind a row of dilapidated houses. They jumped a few fences, stumbling through backyards. Dogs barked, lights flicked on in some windows. Finally, they emerged onto a small side street where Aurora had parked. They dove into the sedan. Aurora slammed the key into the ignition. The engine groaned but started. Headlights flared behind them as an SUV roared up the street. Sanders gasped. Aurora floored the accelerator, tires squealing. In the rearview mirror, she saw Holt leaning out the window of the SUV, brandishing a rifle. She wove the sedan side to side, trying to make herself a harder target. Shots crackled, smashing the sedan's rear window. Glass rained onto the back seat. Sanders ducked low. "We're gonna die." His voice was tight. "No, we're not." She yanked the wheel, careening onto the main road. It was late, so traffic was sparse. She saw the neon sign of a liquor store flash by. Another shot rang out, punching a hole in the trunk. She pressed the gas pedal to the floor, urging the old engine to go faster. The SUV gained on them. The muzzle of Holt's rifle flashed again, bullet pinging off the fender. Aurora spotted a narrow cross street up ahead, half blocked by construction cones. She whipped the wheel, the sedan careening onto that street, nearly clipping a row of cones. The SUV behind them tried to follow, but the driver misjudged, smashing into the cones and scraping the side of a parked car. Aurora seized the moment to widen her lead. They hurtled through the deserted streets, turning blindly, trying to lose pursuit. After a few more blocks, the SUV's lights disappeared. Either they gave up or took a wrong turn. Aurora didn't wait to find out. She kept driving until they reached the outskirts of town, pulling into a dark field behind an old barn. She killed the headlights and they sat there, panting. The night was eerily silent aside from their ragged breathing. Aurora's hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. The adrenaline storm raged inside her. Sanders clutched his stomach, looking like he might vomit. Finally, Aurora spoke, voice shaking with pent-up emotion. "They tried to kill us. Their own deputy." Sanders let out a bitter laugh that turned into a sob. "That's how it is here. No going back now." Aurora turned, forcing him to meet her gaze. "You did the right thing, Sanders. You're not alone. We have the flash drive. Everything we need to blow this wide open." She eyed the bullet-riddled sedan. "But we need to stash this car somewhere safe and get a new ride. They'll be looking for it." Sanders nodded numbly. "I know a place. My cousin runs a towing service near the highway. He's always hated the sheriff. Maybe he'll help." Aurora sighed with relief. "Then let's do it. And I'll call Lindsay. She has enough now to get a federal raid going. But we have to ensure they don't move those detainees tonight." Sanders offered a shaky grin. "Let's hope for the best." She started the battered sedan again, creeping out of the field, lights off until they hit a deserted highway. Then she flicked them on, scanning for any sign of pursuit. None. Maybe Taggart's men were regrouping. As they headed north toward the towing service, Aurora dialed Lindsay. It rang and rang, but no answer. She tried again. Still no response. Anxiety gnawed at her. Lindsay wouldn't just ignore a call, especially now. Something might be wrong. She shot Lindsay a quick text. "We have the evidence. Need you to contact Judge ASAP. Let me know you're safe." Then she refocused on driving. They reached the towing yard, a fenced lot strewn with wrecked cars and battered trucks. A single floodlight illuminated a small trailer office. Sanders stepped out first, calling softly. "Rob, you in there?" A tall, lean figure emerged, wearing grease-stained coveralls. At the sight of Sanders and Aurora, plus the bullet holes in the sedan, he gave a low whistle. "What the hell, cuz? You start a war?" Sanders grimaced. "Kind of." Rob beckoned them inside the trailer office, locked the door behind them, and turned off the overhead light. Only a small desk lamp glowed. "Spill it." In hushed tones, Sanders explained everything. Taggart, the mayor, the kidnapping operation, Aurora's mother, the warehouse. Rob's eyes grew wide with a mix of alarm and excitement. "I knew Taggart was dirty, but this is insane." "So, you need a new set of wheels?" Aurora nodded. "Anything that doesn't stand out. And we need somewhere to ditch this sedan so Taggart's men can't trace it." Rob rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "All right. I got an old station wagon out back, half rusted but runs. I can make the sedan disappear into the salvage lot. You two can keep your heads down in my spare room if you need." Aurora shook her head. "We can't risk you. If Taggart or Holt find out you helped us, you'll be on their list." "Lady, I've been on their list since I refused to pay their safety tax. They set my yard on fire a few months back. Didn't do much but burn some old tires, but the message was clear. Screw them, I want to help." She was touched by his resolve. "Thank you." Rob handed them keys to the station wagon. "This puppy's not pretty, but it'll get you around. Now, I gotta call my friend who runs the midnight shift at a local chop shop, see if he can handle your sedan, so it just vanishes." Sanders nodded. "Do it. And Rob, sorry to drag you into this." Rob clapped him on the shoulder. "We're family. Let's get these bastards out of Cedar Falls." They parted ways. Aurora and Sanders quickly transferred any essentials from the sedan into the station wagon, then watched as Rob and a couple of his workers towed the shot-up sedan to the back lot. Aurora set off again, heading for the motel Lindsay had mentioned. She had to confirm Lindsay's safety, then plan the next move. On the drive, Sanders looked out the window, voice taut. "I never expected to be on the run for my own department. You've turned my world upside down, Aurora." She offered a sympathetic glance. "I'm sorry, but you wanted to do the right thing." "Yeah," he murmured. "It's just, I feel like I'm stuck in one of those action movies." A bad one, she quipped, trying to lighten the mood. He managed a weak smile. Let's hope it has a good ending. They reached the rundown Pine View Motel just after midnight. The neon sign buzzed overhead. Aurora parked around the corner to avoid drawing attention. She told Sanders to wait in the car. Then she snuck to the second floor where Lindsay had said she'd be. A single bulb flickered in the walkway. She found room 27, heart pounding. She knocked softly. No answer. She tried again. Silence. Concern blooming, Aurora tested the door. It was locked, but she heard a faint sound from inside, like a muffled groan. Her instincts flared. Something was wrong. She crouched, producing a small folding multi-tool from her pocket. With surprising deftness, she popped the cheap motel door lock. Sliding inside, she let her eyes adjust to the dimness. The lamp was off, only the parking lot light streaming through the window. Lindsay lay on the floor, ankles and wrists bound with zip ties, a strip of duct tape over her mouth. She looked dazed but conscious. Aurora rushed over, peeled the tape off. Lindsay sucked in air, eyes wild. They grabbed me. 2 men. They forced their way in. Aurora's heart hammered. Are they still here? Lindsay shook her head. They took my phone and laptop. I heard them say something about checking the flash drive or evidence. They left maybe 5 minutes ago. I tried to scream, but she gestured to the tape. Aurora cut the zip ties with her multi-tool. Are you hurt? Lindsay winced, rubbing her wrists. I'll live. They clocked me in the head. Couldn't see their faces. Wore ski masks. But I heard them say Taggart's name. They mentioned the mayor, too. They must have known I was FBI. They said something about making an example of me if I didn't back off. Aurora helped her to her feet. This is escalating fast. They probably have your phone now, so they know we have the flash drive. They might try to track me next. Lindsay's eyes flicked to the door. We have to get out of here. Did you get the evidence? Aurora patted her pocket. Yes, Deputy Sanders is with me. He's risking his life. We have direct proof of the illegal detention center by the river. Lindsay nodded, chest heaving. Good. Then we can request a federal emergency injunction or warrant. But I'll need a phone that's not compromised and a safe place to do the paperwork. My entire ID is in that laptop. She grimaced. Let's go. I can't stay here. They might come back. Aurora guided her outside, scanning the walkway. All clear. They slipped down the stairs to the station wagon. Sanders blinked in surprise at Lindsay's disheveled appearance. Are you? He began. I'm okay, Lindsay muttered. We need to get out of Cedar Falls. Let's find a place in the next county. I can call the FBI from there. They agreed. Aurora started the engine, pulling onto the highway that led out of town. We have to move fast. My mother might be transferred tomorrow. We can't let them get away. Lindsay was already rummaging in her bag for a backup phone. She dialed a number. Special Agent Dillard, she whispered when someone answered. Yes, it's Cole. I have a code black situation. Local police corruption, kidnapping, multiple detainees, possible murder, need urgent intervention. No, I can't talk longer on this line. Stand by for details. She ended the call, wiping sweat from her brow. Dillard's an ally in the Bureau. He'll try to expedite. But it's not guaranteed. The local corruption might extend to state levels, or there may be bureaucratic delays. We might not see official help until tomorrow. Sanders inhaled. Tomorrow might be too late. They're planning to move the prisoners tomorrow night. Aurora's hands tightened on the wheel. Then we handle it ourselves if we have to. We can't wait while my mother and innocent people get disappeared or killed. Lindsay exhaled slowly. All right. Let's find a safe place to lay low, finalize a plan. We can coordinate with Dilar as soon as he has resources on the ground. They drove in tense silence, passing the now leaving Cedar Falls sign. It felt surreal, fleeing her hometown like criminals. But Aurora was resolute. She wasn't abandoning the detainees. She'd be back, with or without official backup. About 15 miles out, they pulled into an old roadside motel. A place that looked even more neglected than the last. but it was out of the local sheriff's jurisdiction at least. They rented a single room, using cash, no names. The clerk barely looked up from his phone. Inside, Aurora checked the locks, then turned to Lindsay. "How do we save them all and ensure the criminals face justice?" Lindsay sank onto the edge of a worn bed, wincing at her bruised head. "We need a two-pronged approach. 1. Gather a small team. Us. Maybe a couple of loyal folks from the next county's police or ex-military we can trust. To raid the warehouse, free the detainees. 2. We broadcast the proof widely so Taggart and Rhodes can't cover it up. That means uploading the files, streaming the rescue, something that ensures public scrutiny." Aurora considered this. "We could leak everything to major news outlets, but Taggart has reach. He could block local media. National outlets might take too long to respond." Sanders spoke up timidly. "What about social media? Live stream it from multiple accounts. Tag it so it spreads virally. Hard to suppress once it's out there." Aurora nodded. "That's good, but we still need bodies on the ground to help. The place is guarded by armed men, maybe more if they call reinforcements. I can handle some of them, but not an entire militia." Lindsay rubbed her temples. "Let me call Dillard again. If he can spare even a few trained agents, we can do a surgical strike, but time is short." They agreed. Lindsay stepped outside to get a better signal. Aurora sat on the edge of the other bed, letting out a long, shaky breath. She looked at Sanders. "You saved me tonight, you know. If you hadn't come forward, I'd be stumbling in the dark. Thank you." He offered a sad smile. "Thank you for giving me a chance to do something right." Moments later, Lindsay returned, eyes resolute. "Dillard will have a small infiltration team ready at dawn tomorrow, but not a full task force. He needs official sign-off. The earliest that can happen is midday, maybe later. Meanwhile, they'll probably try to transfer the detainees under cover of night." She glanced at Aurora, an unspoken question in her eyes. Aurora's voice was firm. "We can't wait until midday. We go at dawn with that infiltration team. We'll gather evidence on site, free the prisoners, broadcast everything so the sheriff can't hide. If it gets hairy, at least we have highly trained operators on our side." Lindsay nodded. "I'll finalize the location details with Dillard. The team will meet us near the old logging road behind the warehouse. We approach from the rear, where you said there's less coverage." Sanders swallowed. "We'll need the element of surprise. Those guys won't hesitate to shoot. We might be outnumbered." Aurora's eyes flashed. "Let's see if they can handle someone who's run black ops in foreign territory. And if we can rescue my mother, that's all that matters." A steely silence settled among them. They were about to wage a mini-war against their own countrymen. Corrupt men, but Americans nonetheless. Aurora silently prayed it wouldn't come to a bloodbath, yet she braced for the worst. They rested in shifts, each sleeping fitfully while the others stayed alert. At one point, Aurora woke from a nightmare about her mother locked in a cage, only to find Sanders standing guard, eyes rimmed with anxiety. She gave him a reassuring pat on the shoulder and tried to drift off again, her mind swirling with possible outcomes. By the faint light of dawn, they were back on the road. Lindsay directed them to an unmarked side route that looped behind the warehouse area. The FBI infiltration team would meet them near a clearing. Aurora's stomach knotted with tension. They arrived to find 2 black SUVs waiting, but these had federal plates. 3 agents, plus Dillard, a wiry man with intense eyes, emerged wearing tactical vests. Lindsay introduced them quickly. Dillard's gaze swept over Aurora with cautious respect. "So you're the Delta Force soldier Lindsay mentioned. We appreciate your help, but let's keep this professional. Our objective is to secure the site, free the hostages, and gather evidence for prosecution." Aurora nodded, trying not to bristle at his authoritative tone. "I just want my mother out safely." He gave a curt nod. "Understood. Let's plan." They huddled over a rough map. Aurora described the warehouse layout from her reconnaissance. Sanders filled in details about guard shifts. Dillard assigned roles. 2 agents covering the main entrance, 2 more flanking from the left. Aurora, Lindsay, and Sanders would slip in from the rear to find the detainee. "You're not official law enforcement. Dillard told Aurora. "But Lindsay says you're combat training. Fine, just don't start firing unless absolutely necessary." Aurora forced a stiff smile. "I've been on enough ops to know the rules of engagement." 15 minutes later, they were in motion. The morning sun rose, hazy clouds drifting across it. The group parked their vehicles a quarter-mile away and approached on foot through tall grass and brush. Before they even got close, they heard raised voices and engines. Aurora crouched behind a cluster of bushes, peering through binoculars. She saw 2 trucks inside the fenced area, presumably for moving the prisoners. A handful of armed deputies milled about. Taggart was visible, barking orders, looking agitated. Dillard signaled the team to spread out. Lindsay stuck to Aurora's side, pistol in hand. Sanders stayed behind them, holding the second weapon. They circled wide to the back, where Aurora had climbed the fence before. She saw new boards hammered over the window she'd used. They'd learned from her infiltration. Dillard's voice crackled quietly in Aurora's earpiece. "We're in position. Stand by." Aurora pressed the transmit button. "Copy. We'll breach from the west side. Wait for my signal if you can." She led Lindsay and Sanders through the weeds, finding a small side door that looked lightly guarded. She heard low conversation on the other side. She nodded, then gently tried the doorknob. Locked. She slipped a slim pry bar from her pocket, working the latch. 2 of Taggart's men walked around the corner, rifles slung. Aurora froze, pressing her back to the wall, motioning Lindsay and Sanders to do the same. The men paused to light cigarettes, chatting about the upcoming transfer. Aurora felt her blood boil, hearing them casually discuss shipping her mother off like cargo. When they moved away, Aurora exhaled and finished jimmying the door. It clicked open. She eased it ajar, peeking in. The corridor was empty. She slipped inside, Lindsay and Sanders following. The warehouse interior buzzed with frantic activity. Metallic clanks and muffled cries echoed from deeper within. Aurora recognized the row of cages where the detainees had been. She glimpsed a deputy unlocking one of the cells, dragging out a terrified man in handcuffs. Another deputy barked that they had to hurry. Aurora whispered to Sanders, "Which way to the control room or security office?" He pointed left. "Up those stairs, in the old foreman's office. That's where they keep computers and monitors." Lindsay nodded. "We can gather more evidence if we get in there. Let's do it." They ascended a metal staircase carefully, each step creaking. At the top, a small office with glass windows overlooked the warehouse floor. The blinds were drawn. Aurora pressed an ear to the door. Inside, she heard typing and a low murmur of voices. In one fluid motion, Aurora pushed the door open, leveling her pistol. 2 individuals whipped around in surprise. A deputy at the desk, and none other than Mayor Rhodes, who had his suit jacket off, tie loosened, rummaging through folders. "Hands up," Aurora barked. The deputy started to draw, but Aurora fired a warning shot into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. He froze, hand in midair. Rhodes raised his hands, face pale. "You," Aurora snarled, stepping in. Lindsay and Sanders followed, guns ready. "Back away from the desk." Rhodes complied, trembling. The deputy gulped. "This is an illegal raid. We're calling the real cops." Lindsay, flashing her FBI badge, snapped, "We are the real cops, or close enough. FBI. You're both under arrest for kidnapping, conspiracy, and multiple federal offenses. On your knees, now." They hesitated, and Aurora leveled her weapon at the deputy's chest. "Do it." They slowly dropped to their knees. Sanders hurried forward with plastic cuffs, securing them. Aurora scanned the monitors on the desk. One feed showed the cages, where Taggart was pacing, hollering at deputies to speed up. Another feed showed outside cameras, capturing glimpses of Dillard's team, quietly approaching the perimeter. Taggart seemed unaware. Aurora tapped her earpiece. "We've got the mayor up here. He's in custody. Taggart's inside with the prisoners, some already being moved to trucks." Dillard's voice. "We're set to breach. On my mark. 3, 2, 1, go." Suddenly, the warehouse lights flickered. A deafening crash echoed as the main entrance was forced open. Aurora spotted Taggart on the security feed, drawing his weapon. Deputies scrambled, shouting. Gunfire erupted. The detainees shrieked from inside their cages. Aurora whipped around, eyes fierce. "Sanders, watch them." She gestured to Rhodes and the deputy. "Make sure they don't move." "Lindsay, with me." They bolted out of the office, racing down the stairs. The scene below was chaos. FBI agents exchanging fire with Taggart's men behind crates and trucks. Aurora ducked behind a steel pillar, Lindsay at her side. She spotted Taggart near the detainees, pointing a gun at them as if threatening to use them as hostages. Aurora's adrenaline roared. She turned to Lindsay. "Cover me." She sprinted low across the open floor, weaving between crates. Bullets whizzed overhead. She heard Lindsay firing at Taggart's men, providing cover. Taggart swiveled, saw Aurora, recognized her. He sneered, taking aim. She dove behind a forklift. A bullet ricocheted, sparks flying. She peeked around, seeing Taggart dragging Aurora's mother, Aria, by the arm out of a cage. Her mother's face was contorted in pain, eyes half-lidded. Taggart pressed a gun to Aria's temple, shouting, "Back off, or she dies!" Aurora felt her heart seize. She forced a slow breath, recalling her hostage negotiation training. She emerged from behind the forklift, pistol at her side, but not aimed. "Taggart, let her go." The sheriff barked. "You step any closer, I'll put a bullet in her brain." Around them, the firefight continued, though some of Taggart's men saw what was happening and paused. The FBI agents, uncertain how to proceed, held their fire. Aria moaned. "Rory!" Recognition flickering in her eyes. Aurora's chest tightened with rage and fear. Taggart's voice shook with desperation. "I'm walking out of here with her as my shield. You got that? Everyone stands down." Aurora's mind raced. She could try a shot, but if she missed by an inch, Taggart would kill her mother. She needed a distraction or a perfect angle. She locked eyes with Aria, silently willing her to trust. Just then, Lindsay emerged on a catwalk overhead, aiming down at Taggart. He sensed her presence and twisted, dragging Aria so he faced Lindsay. "Drop it!" Taggart roared. Lindsay froze, cursing under her breath. Aurora took a few more careful steps, heart hammering. "Taggart, you're done. The mayor is in custody, the FBI is here, there's no escape. Don't add murder to your charges." Taggart's eyes blazed. "It's too late for me, soldier girl. I built this empire. You think I'll rot in prison? I'd rather burn down the whole town." He pressed the gun harder to Aria's temple, making her cry out. Aurora inched closer, weapon still pointed downward. "Let me trade places with her," she said suddenly. "You want a better hostage, right? I'm Delta Force. My life's worth more in negotiations. Let my mother go. Take me instead." Aria gasped, "No." Taggart seemed intrigued, though. He sized Aurora up, a wicked grin forming. "That's interesting. Let me see your gun on the ground." Aurora placed her pistol gently on the concrete, sliding it away with her foot. She raised her empty hands. She felt Lindsay's horrified stare from above. Taggart jerked his gun at Aria. "Move aside, old lady. Go, over there." He shoved Aria aside, and she stumbled, nearly collapsing. Aurora's gut twisted, wanting to rush to her mother, but she let Taggart grab her arm and yank her close, the barrel of his gun pressing into her rib cage. "Now you're my ticket out," he hissed. Aria crawled away, an FBI agent rushing to drag her to safety. Aurora exhaled, relieved her mother was free. But now Taggart had a lethal hold on her. She glanced at Lindsay, who aimed but didn't have a clear shot. Taggart began walking backward, dragging Aurora along, heading toward a side exit. His eyes darted left and right, searching for an escape route. The FBI agents parted, not wanting to risk Aurora's life. One of Taggart's men tried to follow, but Taggart barked, "You're on your own." The man sneered and ducked behind a truck, still exchanging gunfire with an agent. Aurora's heart slammed in her chest. She had to time this perfectly. She let him maneuver her near a stack of crates. The side exit door was just ahead. If he got her outside, he might kill her and vanish into the woods. She had to act now. In a lightning move, She slammed her elbow into Taggart's forearm, forcing his gun hand down. He squeezed the trigger reflexively, the shot hitting the concrete floor. Pain exploded in Aurora's side as he smashed the butt of the gun into her ribs. She didn't let it stop her. She stomped hard on his foot, twisted out of his grip, and caught his wrist with both hands. The gun tumbled away. Fury twisted Taggart's features. He swung a wild punch that clipped Aurora's chin, making her head ring. She retaliated with a savage right cross, honed by years of combat training. Taggart reeled, blood spattering from his split lip. They grappled viciously. Aurora felt the raw power in his frame, but she'd fought men bigger than him. She blocked his knee, struck his throat with a precise knuckle jab, and followed with a headbutt. He staggered, but refused to drop, swinging a haymaker that grazed her temple. Stars danced in her vision, and she let out a primal yell, sweeping his leg out from under him. He crashed to the floor. She pinned him, driving her knee into his chest. Her fists hammered down, once, twice, until he went limp, half unconscious. She pinned his arms behind him, panting. FBI agents rushed over, weapons raised. Dealer barked, "Stand aside, soldier." Aurora let them pull Taggart up and slap cuffs on him. The entire warehouse had gone quiet, save for moans from wounded deputies and the sobbing of detainees still in cages. She stood there, chest heaving, blood trickling from her lip, arms trembling. Arya appeared, leaning on Lindsay, tears streaming. Aurora ran to her, gently embracing her mother, relief crashing over her like a tidal wave. "Mom? Oh God, Mom, are you okay?" Arya hugged her back, voice shaky. "I'm fine, baby. Just some bruises. They threatened us. Threatened to kill us if we didn't cooperate. Thank you." Aurora felt tears of her own. "You're safe now. It's over." She glanced around. FBI agents were ushering the detainees out of their cages, paramedics arriving to treat the injured. Lindsay was filming everything with her phone, a visual record that would go online. Unstoppable. Rhodes was let out in cuffs, sputtering protests. Taggart stared at Aurora with venom as he was shoved into a squad car. Sanders emerged from the office with a look of awe. He caught Aurora's gaze and nodded once, respect in his eyes. She nodded back, letting out a breath. They had done it. A short while later, the press arrived. Journalists who'd caught wind of a major FBI operation. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Aurora shielded her mother from the chaos. She spotted a local station interviewing one of the freed detainees, who sobbed about being held without charges. The story would blow wide open. There'd be no covering it up. Dillard approached, rubbing the back of his neck. "Well, I guess we got everything on record, plus the files on that flash drive. Rhodes, Taggart, their deputies. They'll face federal charges. Good work, all of you." He paused, regarding Aurora. "I owe you an apology if I was curt. We don't often rely on outside help, but you came through." Aurora gave a tired half-smile. "I'm just glad my mother's safe." She glimpsed Arya sitting on the back of an ambulance, receiving first aid for a sprained wrist. The rest can come later. Lindsay joined them, wiping sweat from her brow. "We have statements from at least a dozen detainees. The Bureau is definitely taking over the entire Cedar Falls law enforcement structure. The mayor's done, the sheriff's done. The corruption will unravel from here." Sanders stood off to the side, uncertain, like he didn't belong. Aurora walked over, resting a hand on his shoulder. "You'll probably face some heat for your involvement, but I'll speak for you. You're the whistleblower who made this possible." He swallowed, tears of relief filling his eyes. "Thank you." Arya called Aurora over. Aurora hurried, wrapping her mother in a gentle hug. She stared into Arya's eyes, bright with gratitude and a lingering trace of fear. "I'm so proud of you," her mother whispered. Aurora choked back a sob. "I was terrified I'd lose you. But you didn't. Because you fought, like you always do." Arya stroked her daughter's hair. "A Delta Force commander, saving her hometown. Never thought I'd see the day." Aurora pressed her forehead to Arya's shoulder. "We'll rebuild, Mom. Cedar Falls can't be left in ruins. We'll make it right." Arya smiled, tears shining. With you here, I have no doubt. Days later, Aurora found herself standing on the steps of the Cedar Falls courthouse, where newly appointed federal overseers were restructuring the local government. The press tried to swarm her, but she politely declined interviews, letting the FBI handle official statements. She wasn't in it for glory. Her mother was recovering at home, bruises fading, spirit unbroken. The detainees were free, some giving harrowing accounts on national TV of their time in the cages. The entire country was learning how one small town had descended into tyranny and how a group of determined individuals, led by a fiercely loyal soldier, had fought back. Sanders testified in court, presenting the flash drive as key evidence. He was placed under a federal protection program for the time being, but Aurora sensed he'd eventually return to Cedar Falls to help rebuild a legitimate, honorable police force. Lindsay stayed a few more days for legal follow-up, ensuring the arrests stuck. Then she parted with Aurora, promising they'd keep in better touch. On her final day in town, Aurora stood at her mother's side on the old porch, which had been hastily repaired. The sunlight felt different, warmer, as if the entire town breathed easier now that the corruption was exposed. Arya nudged her gently. "So, you heading back to base soon?" Aurora nodded, gaze distant. "I'll need to report in, probably face a ton of paperwork explaining what happened. Might even be some friction because I operated unofficially." She sighed. "But it was worth it." Her mother smiled proudly. "You've always been a fighter, and you fight for what's right, no matter the cost." Aurora hugged her, feeling safe for the first time since she'd returned. "I love you, Mom." They stood there, letting the weight of recent events wash away in the golden late afternoon light. A new chapter was beginning for Cedar Falls, one not ruled by fear. And for Aurora Hendricks, she'd discovered that sometimes the hardest battles weren't on foreign soil, but right here at home. Aurora Hendricks left Cedar Falls a week later, her name whispered with admiration among the townspeople who'd witnessed her unwavering courage. The FBI completed their cleanup operation, arresting dozens of complicit officials, seizing financial records that implicated the mayor and sheriff in a sprawling network of extortion and abuse of power. It wasn't a clean process. Rebuilding trust never is. But local activists, once frightened into silence, found new strength after seeing the system topple. Community meetings became a place for real dialogue, not just empty promises. A new interim sheriff, vetted by federal authorities, took office with a vow of transparency. And while scars remained, business owners who'd lost livelihoods, families who'd lost loved ones, Cedar Falls was learning to heal. Aurora, back at Fort Bragg, resumed her duties as the deadliest Delta Force commander. Yet she carried the memory of Cedar Falls in her heart. She'd learned that the lines between soldier and citizen can blur when injustice demands action at home. Lessons for everyone. True courage isn't limited to war zones. Aurora's story reminds us that battles against corruption and injustice can arise anywhere, even in your own hometown. Standing up, speaking out, and refusing to yield to fear can be just as heroic as any act on the battlefield. Solidarity breaks the cycle of oppression. Cedar Falls was freed not by one individual, but by a network of brave souls. Sanders, Lindsay, local allies, each contributing in different ways. Courage is contagious. Once a few people resist, others find their voices. Corruption thrives in silence. Mayor Rhodes and Sheriff Taggart exploited a climate of fear. Exposing their actions to the sunlight of public scrutiny was the key to dismantling their power. Transparency is the enemy of corruption. The power of whistleblowers. Sanders risked everything to leak evidence. His moral choice was the turning point. Whistleblowers, however small their position, can topple entire machines of wrongdoing if they're supported and protected. Family and community bonds are a strong shield. Aurora's determination to save her mother became a catalyst for saving the entire town. Whether by blood or shared values, the bonds we hold can empower us to fight for each other. Rebuilding takes time but begins with accountability. Justice for the corrupt was the first step. Restoring trust in public institutions requires ongoing vigilance, community engagement, and a willingness to demand reforms. Change starts where you stand. Aurora might have had elite military training, but the crucial force was her uncompromising sense of right and wrong. Each of us can adopt that same moral clarity in our own spheres, big or small. The story of Cedar Falls spread across the nation, sparking debates on police oversight, local governance, and how easily unchecked authority can morph into tyranny. People from all walks of life discussed how to safeguard their communities, how to prevent small injustices from growing into systemic oppression. And perhaps that is the greatest legacy Aurora Hendricks left behind. The reminder that justice isn't a passive ideal, but an active duty we all share.